Test, test, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we're going to have a delay. We've got some council members out of town, vacations, that sort of thing. We have one council member that was in a meeting on housing about homeless, and she's breaking away from that to come so that we'll have a quorum, but we have to wait till she gets here, probably 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay, it's time to get started. I'll call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Lawton City Council to order. Please stand for the invocation by Pastor Gordon Brooks of the First Church of God and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you to ask that you be with these council members, dear Heavenly Father. We ask that you'll give them the wisdom to do what is needed to help them and also help us living here in Lawton. We ask that everything they do will be to our benefit as a community. We ask that you watch them, over them, and keep them safe and bless them. In Jesus Christ's holy name, amen. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, Pastor. Please call the roll.
Hankins. Harris. Chapman. Burke. Hampton. Fortenbaugh. Johnson. Warren.
And a quorum is established. So I'd like to take just a minute to introduce to you our new garrison commander, Colonel P, spelled P-E-A-Y, pronounced P. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir, it is.
Would you like to say anything?
My family and I are incredibly excited to be here. I'm an artillery officer by trade, and as kind of said last Friday, I think last time I lived here, gas was probably 98 cents a gallon on post. So I don't know if we can make much change to get it back that way, but I'll take credit for every cent it falls. We just got in town about a month ago. Again, really excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And with that, we move on to a presentation. Recognize employees from the Arts and Humanities Division for their work on the Freedom Festival. Michael.
As you can tell, if you participated in the event, it was a wonderful event. It was a 2-day, which we haven't had in the past. So we had street performers, we had bounce houses, we had a whole lot of food vendors. The Disney princesses were a colossal hit. We're sorry that 77th Army Band couldn't play, but Jason pulled off a minor miracle and had those folks there. Emily Faith sang for us and did a wonderful job. We hope to have her back. But all that couldn't have occurred without our Parks and Rec department and our Arts and Humanities division, which led this event. So Jason, why don't you bring you and your crew up that helped set that up, and let's recognize your achievement, and thank you for a great event. They did a wonderful job at this event, so if you would please join me in giving them a hand for a job well done. Keep it short, keep it sweet.
Thank you so much. It's been fun. It's been an honor to serve. I just want to recognize. So we got Teresa Neely. Oftentimes I get phone calls, and they're calling the Arts and Humanities office. We're a small office, and they get me, and I'm like, I'm the administrator. Like, is Teresa there? I want to talk to Teresa. So she really helps makes everything happen. Michelle Rosario was a new addition. She came in just running. She's with her office maybe 2 months, and all of a sudden she's planning an event for the entire city, and she's done a wonderful job. So many times it was like, hey, I need to find this, and she would report back to me by the end of the day. So moving on, we have Parks and Rec, the grounds, and so in not having their supervisor present, just really coming down and just taking care of everything. So Broderick Jackson, maintenance with our division, Arts and Humanities, but it's also for every festival going on behind the scenes, is somebody willing to take care of everything, and Broderick's that guy. Stavis Mormon, who is the stage manager for the City of Lawton for McMahon Memorial Auditorium, and often runs the shows, make sure everything runs smoothly, and he's behind the scenes making sure festivals run smoothly. And then we actually have his daughter, who works over at the library, so Sapphire, who is helping us out with all the printing, all the posters, last-minute posters that we needed. Hey, we need this do not enter sign, we need this parking sign, we need this do not cross because it's the fallout area sign. She would make that happen. We also had Christy Shannon. Did Christy Shannon make it down? Oh, Christy, where are you at? That's why we had you come down. She's with GIS, and so the first time ever we had an interactive map for Freedom Festival, and that was designed by Christy Shannon and her team over at Graphic Information Systems. So thank you so much. So like I said, it's a whole team, and it's the City of Lawton, and it's the support, it's the city manager, it's the deputy city manager saying, hey, we trust you with putting on this event, and it was just an honor to put it on, and I'm so glad that everybody had so much fun. Thank you.
So again, thank you so much to our Arts and Humanities Division and our Parks and Rec Department. Thank y'all very much. Chief Smith, you come up for a second, please? One more thing, Mayor. I think this is pretty important. So come on up. I'm just going to speak loudly, if that's all right with everybody. I want to take an opportunity to congratulate Chief Smith on his selection as the president of the Oklahoma Association of Police Chiefs Board. So our own chief is now the president of all the Oklahoma chiefs as far as the Police Association Board. So congratulations, Chief. Thank you so much.
Michael, photo.
Oh, photo?
Yeah.
I'm standing next to the really skinny guy.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Very good.
Now, Chief, did you want to make a speech? Why don't you grab that mic and say a little something?
Short and sweet. Well, thank you. It's an honor, and it's an honor to represent all law enforcement agencies in the state. And our goal is to better law enforcement through training and education and transparency. So it's a lot of hard work, but it's going to be worthwhile. So thank you.
Okay, now we move on to reports by the mayor and city council. And we'll start down here with Ward 1. Okay, and Ward 2.
I just wanted to echo what Jason said about his crew. I was one of the last people in the park that night, and Broderick was making rounds at the very end, making sure that all the City of Lawton ice chests and stuff were picked up. And I was very impressed with his work ethic, Jason. So, but you did an awesome job, and we appreciate all you do.
Thank you. And Ward 5.
Thanks, Mayor. I had the opportunity to go to tomato festivals. Tomatoes. I was impressed by the stream of citizens that came through. There was a lot of people there, but it was a constant flow or a river of people. There was a lot of activities, and it's turning out to be quite a green space or a gathering space for citizens. And if you haven't had the opportunity, I believe there's air conditioning in part of the building at least. And I just wanted to give a shout out. Richard, did you? Yeah, Tuesday nights, that's right. And I was going to mention that they have the food trucks out there. My wife and I go out and get a little bite to eat. There's other places to stay. But it's really turning out to be a great addition to the city. And as I said, if you haven't had the opportunity to go out and partake, I want to invite you out there because it really is a great experience. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And Ward 6. Ward 7. Okay, and we're sorry they had to pull you away from that important meeting you were in. Ms. Johnson was actually in a meeting for the home funds and ARPA, and working to make sure we got our, we'll say fair share, but we're looking for an unfair share, right? So thank you for doing that. Now, I want to echo about Jason and his crew as well. And you know, the bar's been raised, right? And the International Festival's coming up. There he is. I thought he left. He's still back there. I'm glad you're hearing this. The bar's been raised and the International Festival's coming up, and we're looking forward to great things. Thank you, Jason. And with that, we move on to audience participation. Anyone having an item of business to present to the City Council that does not appear on the agenda, please come forward at this time. And we have two people that have requested to speak. If Mr. Edward Jensen and Miss Betsy Batty, I think is the way that's said, will come forward. And anybody can come during this time. You do not have to have filed. And I've already, did I say your name right, ma'am? Did I say?
You said it right, and you're the only one.
All right. All right, we've got your address here, so we're good to go. What
Okay,
can we
so
do for you?
this one right here? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so greetings to the council. My name is Betsy Batty. I've been in Lawton for 42 years, and I've been in business for 21 years as a daycare home provider. Currently, you know, you only license for 7, but DHS say we can have 12. So it does create a bit of a problem. But I'm here to speak in behalf of all the daycare homes in this town. Okay, the decision to have 12 was actually based on solid research. And I would like to just list a few of the many benefits if there was a policy change on your part. For instance, let's say you wanted to have 12. Instantly, you would have to hire someone. So now you got a bona fide taxpayer in our city to working in a home to care for the 12. Let's say you wanted to specialize in infants. If you have 6 infants, you're good. You can have 6 infants, 6 over 2. But if you got that 7 infants, you got to hire another person. The ratio is wonderful. Now you have 3 people with 12 kids, and that is a serious ratio. Oklahoma has some of the strictest regulations to care for your children in the states, okay? So I'd like to just say this. Oh, number 3. Okay, we're in a daycare crisis. What led to the crisis, a lot of people lost their jobs, then daycares closed down because of it. But what's driving it, now you got people coming back, and some of the daycares have not opened, the big centers. Also, first responders, doctors, nurses, teachers, firefighters, all of them now have access to free daycare because of their wonderful contribution to our safety. So that's also driving the numbers up. So if you could just allow 5 extra children for all the homes in Lawton, we could put a dent in that daycare crisis. And not only that, this is to you, okay? You would become a bona fide partner with the best daycare system in the country and a serious contributor in doing your part and lessening the impact COVID-19 has had on the residents in Lawton. Thank you for this opportunity.
All right, thank you for coming, and it's my understanding we have a possible agenda coming in the near future. Thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Jensen.
Yes, sir.
And we've
Yes.
got your address here, so we're good to go.
Okay. Well, I'm a new resident to Lawton. I moved here in March, but I was down here in November to look over the city as a possible place to move to. And one of the things that I saw in this city when I came here was that I was staying out in the hotels out there along the interstate. And on Gore Boulevard and I-44, none of the streetlights were working. The city was dark at that intersection. And those are city streetlights. They're not part of the, public service responsibility because they're connected to the traffic signals. So someone needs to fix that. As far as I know, they have not been fixed yet. I don't go out so much at night now because it's daylight till 9 o'clock, so that's almost my bedtime. But when I come into town, I ride my bike a lot in the city. In fact, I was out this morning 31 miles out in the countryside. But if I come into town on Gore Boulevard and I cross Interstate 44, I don't like those curbs that are at all the exits and entrances to the highway. Now, I know it's probably a federal issue, but those curbs come right out to the street, basically, where you have that wide shoulder, at other points, but then all of a sudden the curb comes out there, and as a bicyclist, you're forced to get out into the lane of traffic, and not everybody, is kind to bicyclists. So if there's some way to cut those curbs and make those, shoulders straight through there, that would really be nice. And then when I come down Highway 7 coming into town, and you get near the interstate, and you have a sign, welcome to Lawton. But you can't read the sign because the bushes are in front of the sign and cover it up. So either the sign needs to be raised or the bushes removed or cut down, one or the other. And I think that's about it, except one more thing I had. On East Gore, and to give you the exact address, I don't know, but it's out there near the Family Dollar. That sidewalk there is just broken up. Now, I've reported that on the I Help Lawton way back in April, and nothing has been done about it yet. I guess it says it's assigned, but it's very, very dangerous for a bicyclist, and it wouldn't work for somebody in a wheelchair to go down that sidewalk at that particular point. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming, and by law, we can't engage in a conversation that's not on the agenda, but I noticed Deputy City Manager Rich Rogowski paying close attention to what you were saying, and if you want to get with him, he can probably answer some of your questions or thoughts that you had. Thank you for coming.
Yes, sir.
Is there anybody else that would like to come during this time for audience participation? Hi, sir. We'll need your name and address, please.
Yes, sir. Tom Milam, Duncan, Oklahoma.
Okay.
We also do work for the city under Hotline and Air Solutions, but I'm trying to address the issue of the specifications on the Highland Cemetery archway repairs.
That's on the agenda.
It is on the agenda?
It's on the agenda.
Okay.
That's on the agenda?
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
Okay, so we have an agenda item for that, and we do need to get your address.
P.O. Box 874, Duncan.
Okay.
73534.
Okay, and you'll have to come back up during the item, okay?
That's all, since it's on the agenda.
What agenda item is it?
Hi.
Since it's on the agenda, we have to discuss that at that spot on the agenda.
Okay.
So,
That's all I need then.
audience participation is only for items not on the
Not on
agenda.
the agenda. All right, thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to come during this time of audience participation for items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on. We have some changes on the agenda, starting with the business. We're striking item 14, 15, 16, and 18. We're striking them from the agenda. 14, 15, 16, and 18, that's from the business agenda, okay? Now, on the consent agenda, well, let me go ahead and read the wording here, and then I'll tell you what we're pulling. The following items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted with one motion. Should discussion be desired on an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda prior to action and considered separately. Council, I have items 5, 6, 7, and 9 that we are pulling. 5, 6, 7, and 9. Are there any other items you wish to pull, Council? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of polling items 5, 6, 7, and 9.
Do we have a second? We have a second. Please vote. And the motion carries 5-0. It brings us to item number 5. Consider approving a resolution to amend the Downtown 1 Urban Renewal Plan, modifying existing language in permitted land uses and add the uses permitted on review process in the Commercial Central District and the Mixed Use District. Janet.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. This is actually number 5, 6, and 7 are items that were presented through LURA, our Lawton Urban Renewal Authority, and these are resolutions that they have adopted, and it is part of the plan that LURA has, and so they're presented to you for ratification of the plan that has been adopted. And LURA is a state-authorized board, if you will, or authority that has been here for years and years, and they help us to determine what uses that we will have for the urban renewal plan.
Mr. Fortenbaugh, do you have a question?
I had a question about this. First, can you tell me very simply what we changed from what we had before?
Yes, sir. What we did was to standardize language. We had some outdated language concerning eating establishments and alcohol permitted uses. We also needed to change or actually add in daycare center. We also needed to add in multimodal transportation and then a uses permitted on review. So those were recommendations that staff made to LURA to make that an easier document to work with developers for.
Multimodal transportation, is that like LATS?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know where the LATS facility is going to be?
We are proposing that it be on Railroad between A and B, with some part of it around D, but that has not been formally adopted yet by the City Transit Trust, but that is a proposal that we made to a subcommittee of the council, and it will be coming to you. We're working on plans for the transfer station is what it's called, the technical name of it, but everybody else would know it as the bus station, but we're going to call it Grand Central Station.
Okay, move to approve the resolution number 5.
Okay, a motion to approve the resolution, item number 5. Is there a second? Second. And we have a second. Please vote. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 6. Consider approving a resolution to amend the D6 Urban Renewal Plan, modifying existing language and permitted land uses and adding the uses permitted on review process in the Commercial Central District and the Mixed Use District. Mr. Fortenbaugh.
Move to approve this resolution.
We have a second? Second. And we do have a second. Please vote. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 7, consider approving a resolution to amend the Civic Center Urban Renewal Plan, modifying existing language and permitted land uses and adding the uses permitted on review process in the Mixed Use District. Mr. Fortenbaugh.
Move to approve the resolution.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
I guess this is Janet, is this you again? On item 19, it says typical uses include restaurants, short order eating places, cafeteria and coffee shops, where it says liquor, beer, wine, and spirits, and that's scratched out, and then it just says alcoholic beverages are not being served or sold.
That's just one designation for a particular type of eating establishment that does not serve alcohol, but then there are plenty of the other ones that do provide for that. We're really adhering to the ABLE laws, the alcohol beverage, I forget what it is now, alcoholic beverage.
The Able Commission.
Yes, the ABLE Commission. Sorry. But they regulate that. We shorten that name all the time. So what we were doing was really, again, just standardizing the language. We had some uses that were permitted in some areas and not in others, and it was preventing us from developing. And so we offered these changes to LURA to just make it easier for us to accommodate certain types of requests.
And of those certain types of requests, is one of those a facility that serves less than 51% food? Or would it be primarily for alcohol or?
Potentially, but that would be a uses permitted on review. And that's what we added in there, was that in our opinion, it is always better for a governing body to make a decision about what it's used for, rather than an administrative call. And we were having to make a lot of administrative calls based on the lack of our ability to approve certain uses. And so bringing the uses permitted on review was one of the vital components of really success of our urban renewal plan.
So potentially, we could just have a club now, or like the Chianti's Wine Bar or something like that? Could
Potentially,
be in there now.
yes.
Okay.
If it's approved by the governing body and complies with the ABLE Commission rules and regulations.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any further discussion? Michael, did you want to discuss?
Yes, Mayor, so that's the Alcohol Beverage Laws Enforcement Commission. So now we all know, and we
Okay.
can go back to ABLE.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion carries 5-0. Moves us to item number 9. Consider rejecting the bids received for RFP CL 22-048 Highland Cemetery Entrance Arch Masonry Restoration and authorizing the staff to rebid. Dwayne.
Mayor and Council, this is, we're back to the Highland Cemetery Arch. So we solicited bids for qualified, according to the specifications that were requested or directed by council, for vendors that could come in and do the restoration and repair work on the cemetery arch. Unfortunately, of the 3 bids that we did receive, none of the companies met those specifications, which is why Mr. Milam is here. He would like to speak to you specifically about those specifications. He, in fact, is, I believe, the owner of the 3 companies that did solicit or submit bids to do the work. So he'd like to talk to you a little bit about the specifications.
Did you say the owner of the 3 companies?
He has 3 separate
He
companies.
submitted bids under 3 separate companies?
Yes.
Okay, sir, would you come up and let's hear what you have to say? We've already got your name and address, right, Tracy? Okay.
Yes, sir.
What do you have to tell us?
The specifications on the project itself anyway are pretty narrowing. We have the qualifications as far as the stonemasons, years of experience, and to do the quality of work that this requires. And I know that we can do the job, but the specifications of having done historical work for within the last 3 years is a limiting factor. Like I said, I know my guys. I know how much quality they put into it. We've got over 100 years experience between the 2 master masons that we have, and they particularly do stone work only.
When was the last time you did?
It's stone work.
Oh, no, when was the last time you did
Historical work. We did work
restoration?
at State Capitol back in the 90s. Main Street Duncan projects were little projects here and there, but nothing that was actually historical rated, but it was to do with the old buildings and keeping in fashion with the historical value of the Main Street project.
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Hampton?
Yeah, this gives me the opportunity, I guess, to speak on some work that we've been doing. I'm just not good at these long titles. Just give me 1 second. Matthew Pierce of the National Registration of Historical Places Coordinator up in SHPO in Oklahoma City. We are doing the final touches on getting us registered as a designated historical city through SHPO. Mr. Pierce is going to be coming down in August. I spoke to the city manager about this, to do an inventory of all the WPA and historical properties that the city owns. For some reason, we have not chosen in the past to really make this a priority. It certainly would have been great to do that before we tore down our city years ago. I think there was a lot of historical buildings back then. But in speaking with Mr. Pierce, there are certain regulations and criteria to understand all the briefs that have been written. And Jason and I, of the Director of Arts Humanity, we actually, I've just been told that this is related, really, but just to make a quick response, we're doing work on that and have announcements about that here in the future. Thank you for.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for our speaker? Okay. Thank you, sir.
I have no problem with also ascertaining or trying to get approved by the Historical Society. That's no problem. It's just that we've figured this for the last 3 years for the city and come up with different renditions actually and put a lot of effort into exploring the possibility and think we have found 2 places where the original stone was quarried. So in possibility, we could extend the height of that to where it would be the same rock and all.
Okay, well, the council's going to do what the council's going to do, and we're going to get you to visit with the staff, and he'll be in contact with you.
Okay,
yes.
No problem. Thank you.
Mayor, just a quick comment for you and council. Just to be clear, state law is pretty expansive on this point. We do not need a justification, if you will, to throw out the bids. It's completely within your discretion to throw them out and start all over again without any reason to do that. So I just want to make sure that that's clear with everyone.
Council, do you have any questions for the staff?
No, I would add this one thing. I know Mr. Milam would like to see us modify the specifications. I'm not advocating either way on that. That's obviously a council decision. But for sure, if we're going to modify the specifications, we would need to go back out to allow any other masons or companies that would want to bid that maybe did not bid originally because of the specifications. So either way, we don't have a qualified bid currently, and if we're going to reject those bids to go back out, then we would need direction if you choose to modify those specifications or not.
All right, so we kind of have to reject the bids whether we change the specifications or not.
That's where we're currently at, yes, sir.
All right. Council? We have a motion to reject the bids. We can't act on them. None of them fit the picture.
I'll make a motion to reject the bids and follow on item 9.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion to reject and a second. Discussion or debate? Please vote. Motion carries 5-0. This takes us up to business items. Number 11, hold a public hearing and consider an amendment to Lawton Municipal Code 2015, Section 1812.2, 1232, and 1812.3, 1243, Chapter 18, pertaining to Downtown Lawton Overlay District, modifying existing permitted uses, adding uses for state licensed daycare center and multimodal transportation, adding the uses permitted on review process, providing for severability, allowing for floor amendments. Janet.
Yes, sir. This is the ordinance that we are recommending that City Council approve. That will put everything in line with the resolutions that you just approved earlier for the URP. And so we are asking that council consider adding uses for state licensed daycares, which it was interesting. We had somebody here just speaking on that, but we've got a permitted use for daycares. Also for multimodal transportation that would provide for LATs in several areas wherever the council might determine in the downtown overlay district area. We've also added the uses permitted on review that would allow a process that would actually begin with LURA and then proceed to our CPC, our Planning Commission, and then ultimately to council. And we are asking you to consider allowing the changes to Chapter 18 so that we reflect the same language as are in our URP. And we have a correlation between the two so that there's not a conflict when it comes to how we, answer and say yes for uses. Yes, sir.
Okay, do you have any questions for Janet before I open the public hearing? Need your mic on.
This structure is already in the process, right?
Yes, it has, actually, it's existed for many, many years. LURA has existed since the 70s, and the URP, the Urban Renewal Plan, has been in place and has evolved over the years. We've had numerous changes to the resolution based on, the need for additional uses and things of that nature. And so this is definitely something that's already in place, and CPC is part of adopting a lot of these uses already. We did, after the CPC meeting that was on June 16th, there was a recommendation that we bring LURA back into the process at the very beginning. For some of these uses that we actually present those to our Urban Renewal Authority. They had met already on April the 19th and approved the changes that we were sending to CPC. And so their involvement in this process and in determining the zoning uses and other permitted uses, it will just keep this process moving forward.
I have a question, Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, Janet, this is consolidating language so that as we further develop that area, then we're not going to run into some of the problems that we've had in the past where we have to struggle with the language that's put in there as far as the development and the businesses that go in this area. Most of this is sort of downtown and that TIF district area, correct?
Yes, it encompasses that area as well. Yeah, we've got the three areas, the downtown one, the civic center, and D6. And all three of those areas, the language has been, we've allowed for some consistency of language where in some areas there wasn't as much permission given for uses. And what we've done is just add in language that does allow for additional development.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Janet, will this allow the car wash?
No, sir, we did not specifically allow for a car wash.
Okay, thank you.
We did offer that alternative to LURA, and they decided not to allow it specifically. And instead of that, we recommended the uses permitted on review.
Seeing no other questions, I'm going to open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to come forward on this item, please do so at this time. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public hearing. Council, do you have discussion, motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the language changes.
Okay, and this was an ordinance, so I need your motion to include waive the reading of the ordinance and read the title only. Are you so
moved.
receptive? Is there a second? Second. A motion and a second. Please read the title.
An ordinance pertaining to the downtown Lawton Overlay District, amending sections 1812-2, 1232, and 1812-3, 1243, Chapter 18, Lawton City Code 2015, modifying existing permitted uses, adding uses for state licensed daycare centers and multimodal transportation, adding uses permitted on review, providing for renumbering, providing for severability.
Please vote. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 12, receive a presentation and consider approving a conceptual design for the reconstruction of Shepler Park as prepared by Kimley Horn and Associates and commissioned by the Lawton Enhancement Trust Authority. Richard.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Kind of an exciting presentation for me. We've been working on this park in this area for quite a while. As you all know, when the city offices moved out of the old Wayne Gilley City Hall and moved over into this building, that building was left vacant. The old City Hall building was left vacant. It was actually formerly an elementary school. It was in some pretty bad shape. There's a lot of foundation issues, and that building was eventually demolished. At that time, the question was, what do we do with that property, and how is that going to happen? And there were a number of items that were put together, and even at one point we even just considered putting the transfer station there, and the council said basically, no, we don't want to do that. Let's put that somewhere else, and let's look at this being some kind of an open space in the downtown. In 2017, the Lawton Enhancement Trust Authority approved a concept for that overall, and when we have this presentation, we'll see that concept, an overall concept for that area, and it actually included the farmers market, a farmers market building kind of in the middle of it, and not long thereafter, that project started moving forward, and as you know now, we have that farmers market in place. So that first step of that park is in place. The next thing, the next step was looking at Shepler Park. If any of you have been there recently, the hardscape in Shepler Park is not in very good shape. We've actually had to cut some down and grind a few places off and pour sand and gravel in some of the cracks in order to make it usable for the Arts for All Festival. The Arts for All Festival has been there for many years, and it's a very important event for the community, but it's also an event that brings people to our community, the Arts for All Festival. So. As we see that, you have a nice new farmers market right next to the park, and we realize it needs to move forward. So the Lawton Enhancement Trust Authority commissioned Kimley Horn, and we have Darren Scott here who's going to give you the presentation, retained Kimley Horn to develop a finer concept for the Shepler Park, the Ned Shepler Park there. So Darren, are you ready? Here's your clicker. Okay, and that's how we click.
All right.
All right. And it's a pointer, too.
It's a point. Okay, fancy. All right. Well, good afternoon, council. Like Richard said, really excited to share some of our ideas for Shepler Park. Worked quite a while with Richard over the years on the overall concept, and then, like you said, refining it down to this north part of it, which is Shepler Park. So project scope, Richard mentioned some of the elements as far as what needed to be repaired, but in addition to that, we wanted to look at currently how does it function with the Arts for All, but in addition to that, the new farmers market, and then all the surrounding uses. So part of the project was to obviously work with LEDA and the people on that board, but then also we had a stakeholder group that included Arts for All, the Y, library, First Baptist Church, pretty much the surrounding neighbors there as to what are some of their ideas that could go into this park. So as we worked through it, we understood that obviously the existing conditions were some of those beyond the life of the park and needed to be replaced. So looking at that, but also looking at it is a home for a lot of public art. A lot of new elements have been recently put out there, and then in addition to the older elements. So that was something that we wanted to retain. Talked a lot about the fountain, if that was something that needed to stay or not, and ultimately decided that that's something that could go. But in the new concept, you'll see that the monuments of public art are relocated within the space. Again, Richard mentioned the aging sidewalk issue, so that was definitely a consideration as we look at the redesign. On this slide here, you'll see the overall concept, and this was developed several years ago, looking at the entire, basically 2-block piece that goes all the way down to B Avenue. So Shepler Park is really the front door to that space. So as you look from Gore down, it's downhill towards B Avenue. So really that's kind of your front door. And then obviously with the new farmers market, that becomes, again, the front door to that space. And then also an ability for it to flow down into the lower park, which would be this grander, larger scale lawn area with a larger amphitheater and ways to incorporate the Carnegie Library. So looking at the northern piece, as Richard mentioned, we took a finer detail to this area, and really one of the main considerations was how do we make the farmers market area more cohesive as you go up into the park. So both of the concepts that we developed and ultimately landed on this one included pushing that, if you're out there, you'll see it's a berm up from the parking lot there near the farmers market into the park. So pushing that dirt soil back towards Gore Avenue to create more of a level area from the farmers market out. So that creates kind of the when you have events, it's a flowing space between the farmers market into the park. In addition to that, providing shade, obviously it can be a hot space. And then the northern part of it, incorporating as many of the existing trees as we could. That's where a lot of the higher quality trees were located, was on that north side. So preserving those, but then creating an event lawn, which you see the little squares there, that's basically a 10 by 10 space of an Arts for All booth. We had several conversations with Arts for All as to, is this adequate for their event space? And while it's probably less booth space in the Grand Lawn area, how it functions with the farmers market is something that we feel it can actually grow the Arts for All area. Again, when the Arts for All isn't going on, farmers market, there's space for shade cells, for gathering areas. There's a small event stage, potentially a water feature, and then the northern part is more of the passive zone with the art garden. That's where the monuments and art pieces would be located in that space. And then we have the main promenade coming from 5th and Gore going down potentially into the lower park. So that would be kind of the main spine connecting the two together. On the next slide, and you have this in front of you too, these are just some of the elements of potentially what could be out there. We're talking about trellises and gateway arches, rich paving materials of different types, obviously a lot of shade. And then we mentioned over on the west side towards the Y, potentially adding some sort of playground area, but not so much as the traditional playground, more of a artificial turf, mounds. You'll see, if you've been to Myriad Gardens, they have some spaces like that, in addition to Scissortail Park in Oklahoma City. Just a space to gather and hold various types of events was the main goal of these different spaces. As far as the cost on it, we were tasked to develop a preliminary cost estimate based on the information that we had. Right now, it's roughly 1.9 million on the projected cost. There is some contingency in there for some unknowns. As we get a survey and a little more detail, that'll refine out. But right now, approximately 1.9 million to basically redo Shepler into a downtown gathering space. So with that, if you guys have any questions, I can be happy to answer.
I would just offer that, you know, the question is what the space is for, and what, you know, what the park is there for. And in this case, this level of park, I mean, obviously it's not a sports field, it's not, you know, a kickball place. It really is an event center, and you know, so I mean, the importance of an event center, I mean, we all think about economic development and tourism, all that stuff as being an important part of an event center. But I think this one has a greater importance, and that is that it's in the heart of our downtown. It helps to us in the effort to revitalize our downtown, which is the heart of our community and provides activity and life. And that is what millennials want. That's what our children want in a town, and is a downtown that has something going on and something to do. And so, I mean, this is not an inexpensive, you know, park at all. And of course, what we're asking today is just to simply adopt the concept. Certainly, we're not going to go out and build this tomorrow. But the concept, when you have a concept plan and a cost estimate, that starts the process of raising funds. I mean, that's how the farmers market was built. That's how, you know, many other projects are built. You know, you get a concept, you say, you know what, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it, you know, the right way. And that's kind of, again, that's kind of what the farmers market that has come in, and the community has really adopted that. So that's kind of what we're here for. It's really something. Yes,
So
sir.
in the handout to the council, you have a concept 2. I don't think I saw that in the presentation.
So there were 2 original concepts that were early concepts that were brought to that steering committee, and the steering committee melded those together to this is the final concept that we brought to you. So, you know, that was just, you can see one was an egg shape and one was the pie shape, and then that's really how that was developed.
Council can consider the
No, that's.
So we're voting to accept,
The final concept. Yeah. You might.
or we're discussing it. I don't know that we're voting yet, but I think we are. This one. I see what you got here. I got it. Well, I'm going to tell you, I think this is beautiful, and I think
Yeah.
that, you know, I think it's about time we start thinking about making nicer parks. And obviously, the people said that when they voted for the CIP. Now, you mentioned fundraising, and of course, we're just voting on a concept. We're not voting to go out to bids or anything yet. But you mentioned fundraising. What's your thoughts there? And I'm just curious because I know that's next.
Well, you know, you go out and start looking for grants, you know, and one of the things that you need to get a grant is you need a concept, you need a cost, and you need the governing body to say, yes, we like that. And so that's what really where we're this action really is. It's the last step in the conceptual design and the first step in the fundraising and the grant pursuit. So.
Okay, and how does the old concept that included, I think, after the old post office is torn down, how does that fit in? Is there still a plan? Because I think in the next 5 years that will be
You
gone.
want to go back to the?
Yeah, it's off the screen now.
We're not on the presentation. If Tracy can pull it back up, you know. So what you know, you have an overall concept, and then you got phase 1. Let's call phase 1 the farmers market. Phase 2 we feel is because of the Arts for All is Shepler Park, and phase 3, once that building's down, would be to start working on that southern part. We don't have a final concept for that yet. We just have the original concept, which was, I mean, it actually showed basically a big event venue. Now, so if you think about what this, you know, I don't know how many of y'all have been to Scissortail Park in Oklahoma City. You know, what this is a very scaled down version of it. We're trying to provide all those elements, but we're providing it so we're providing it, so this would be the little stage. So in Scissortail Park, they have I don't know how big that is, but it's a huge area and a huge stage. But we would have this, you know, a version down here. This would be the event lawn or the places where people would watch the event. You can see this was the playground concept that actually we moved a piece of it there, and we'll have a little more of it there, but this is where that building is. And we just keep moving south, you know, and when it comes time to really work this out, you'll go through this same process where you'll have a stakeholders group to come up and say, what do we want these things to really look like? How do we want these elements? Let's scale them for our community. And that's what we had, is they looked at a bunch of pictures and said, yeah, we want some of this, we like that. How can you bring that together for us?
Okay, council?
So, Rich, we discussed this earlier, and the question that I've had from two people today was looking at the expense of this, and also the question was brought up, we're not doing a very good job of upkeeping the parks that we have now. Mm-hmm. How much extra load is this going to put on Christine's people to maintain and keep up? And at the additional cost of putting this in, how do we justify that expense? And I agree with you. I know that it's what do the people want, and they say they want stuff to do, and everybody's been to Scissortail or the Gathering Place go, wow, this is great. So I agree that we need something like that. I just wanted to ask those questions.
Well, again, we're already maintaining Shepler Park as it is, so there would be potentially a marginal increase with the more obviously with more activity. There will be more activity in maintenance, but we kind of want activity at our parks. In the overall parks master plan, you guys have dealt with that issue. We have 85 parks or something like that. A very large number of parks. Some of them are very low utilized. Some of them are very highly utilized. This is an area in the downtown that, right now is highly utilized. I mean, you'll have several hundred people there tonight visiting the farmers market and the food trucks. And after they get their food, they actually wander into Shepler Park, and we actually put a couple picnic tables there just to accommodate them for now. And they wander up there and they sit down and they start enjoying the area. And that's so. In terms of cost, there's going to be an increased cost, but in terms of why you do it is because there's increased utilization. I mean, if it gets used, obviously the community likes it, and that's kind of what this is. That really is the balance on these things.
Actually, with the number of people that are attending the farmers market, especially on Tuesday nights, it's getting a little crowded, and for people to have a place to sit with their families or whatever. So I can see this really being beneficial. And it's certainly not going to make Shepler Park look any better than, because it's going to look worse and worse as the farmers market is growing. So.
And so I don't know if you caught it in there, but the way this park is going to be developed is, we're going to take that bump out right out next to the sidewalk and push it back and put a retaining wall in there. So then it becomes much more of an easy flow for people just to wander right on over and sit down under the shade sails. And I just think. There's places where mini performance art and all that stuff is just going to be really nice.
Okay. So was that a motion for approval?
That is a motion.
Okay, we have a motion for approval of the conceptual plan labeled final. Do we have a second?
I second it.
And we have a motion and a second. Discussion or debate.
Yeah, Mayor, if I could please. It probably interests me maybe more than others. This is Ward 5, and I think that, as I mentioned earlier with the Tomato Festival, with buildings that are coming down there, because I think there's several buildings. Michael, there's several buildings we're looking in the future to take down in that area, the police station as well as the
That's correct, Mr. Hampton. Right now, we're currently going through the process to abate the asbestos, if there is any, in the police station, and when it was built, there probably is. So once that's done, we'll tear that building down. As soon as we finish City Hall, meaning the build out of City Hall, we will then move over to the City Hall Annex, what we call right now the old post office. That will be the next on the list. So as Rich spoke about, pieces got to move around, but as they get moved around and staff gets moved, then we'll be able to tear down that park, which will allow growth, or at least south in that park expansion.
Thank you, Michael. It will be an emptier space. I had somebody ask me about parking. Several people asked me about parking at the farmers market the other day. But like I said, this really interests me. I think that we have another space besides Elmer Thomas Park that we're beginning to develop, and citizens are beginning to enjoy that. There's some evening stuff I've had people mention to me that they're glad to be able to pick up some of the vegetables because they can't make it on Saturday. With that said, I think there's a lot of momentum to continuing to develop this area for the citizens, and I think that it is no doubt that this space is going to add to that as we begin to build out. And I think it's prudent, as any planner knows, that rather than have all that empty space there at one time and then build it out, that we kind of replace things as we go to plan this out, so that once that space is complete, that indeed there will be a venue that we have downtown in our downtown area that the citizens can begin to enjoy. And my vision and goal is that more and more this will begin to build out even further than this Shepler Park area. Thank you, Mayor.
Did you want to say something?
No, I think Councilman Hankins said it.
Okay. Everybody good? Okay, we have a motion and a second. No more discussion and debate. Please vote. The motion carries 5-0. Item number 13, consider accepting and approving the transfer of Lawton Public Schools owned parkland to the City of Lawton, located adjacent to Willow Creek Park, West Lee Park, Gray War Park, and MacArthur Park in exchange for the transfer of portions of City of Lawton owned parkland located in Allen-a-Dale Park, Grandview Park, Elmore West Park, and Woodland Hills Park, and authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the deeds. Dwayne.
Mayor and Council, back in May, we presented basically an overview of a proposal that we had received from Lawton Public Schools for purposes of doing some land swaps concerning parkland. There were multiple parcels that we identified that we kind of co-owned with, I won't say co-owned, but where we had parkland that was directly adjacent to school land. And so from a maintenance standpoint, we would be mowing our portion, and then later on LPS would come back and mow their portions. And so if we didn't mow it at the same time, it looked like we did half a job, right? So it just kind of made sense that we look at it together and see what made a better sense for us from a maintenance standpoint. In addition, they had asked for the Grandview ballparks. There's a section of that piece of property, about 10 acres there, that we own, that is also directly adjacent to the ball fields that they own. They're wanting to make some renovations on those and do some upgrades. And so in order for them to move forward with that, it was our understanding that they needed to have that property so that they had deed to all of that. You had given us the go-ahead back in May to go ahead and complete this process. We've got the deeds ready to go. It's been to the Lawton Public School Board. They've approved them and signed them, and now it's our turn to reciprocate by signing the deeds and executing it.
You have questions?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Michael, I got to say, from how the staff works, this is one of the best deals ever because they captured all the data. I met with them. They asked me to meet with me. It took 10 minutes. They explained everything to me. And then, so as I sit here, just having that 10 minutes of time and not just trying to interpret the agenda, I can wholeheartedly support this. I think more things should be like that, where we get a little bit of an update ahead of time so we kind of know what we're going to be dealing with. But between Cindy and, I don't want to call you Larry. It's the email.
Dwayne is fine.
Dwayne, that's right. Between Cindy and Dwayne, excellent job.
Is that a motion?
And I move to approve.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second? And we have a second. Discussion or debate? Please vote. Need one more vote. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, and we struck 14, 15, 16. That brings us up to staff reports. Receive a finance report for the period ending May 31, 2022.
Council members, I have given you a copy of the May report for the city of Lawton. And what I'd like to first start out on page 3. It'll be the first fold-out page that you get to. Trying to do my best. Kind of being a little creative there with it. But on this, what we see is that if we look at our year-to-date figures compared to the budget figures, we have about a 3.5% increase, or a 7.86% increase in our operational revenues. And if we compare this to the year-to-date of 2021, we see we've got about a 3.1% decrease in our operational revenues. When we add in our transfers, we see that the year-to-date to budget is increased by 3.5%. But our year-to-date to last year at this time, we're about the same, a negative 1.9. It's down just a little. What this is telling us, or what this is telling me, is that this year we're bringing in money at a higher rate than what we expected to during our budget process. And we're bringing it in at about the same level as what we brought it in last year. Now, my report today is kind of a good news, bad news deal. So we're going to be talking about the good news here first. If you look at the next page, which would be the handout, the excerpt, the part of the document got cut off from printing, so it's going to be the inserted document. We see that we've collected about $46.5 million in sales tax revenue. Compared to last year, this is about a 12% increase. If we look at a month-to-month comparison of May, we see it's a 5.7% decrease. May of 2021, not sure what fiscal year 2021, not sure what happened, but we had an unusually large, well, I know what happened. We had an unusually large increase that year. I believe that was the first month that some of the COVID payments came out. And some of those Corona relief stimulus funds came out to the citizens, and they were out spending that. If we look at what we're expecting to receive in the month of July or June rather, we're going to see. I expect this money to go down about 7.35% from what was collected this month. So that means we're going to collect a total this year, I think, of a little over $51 million. Which would be an about 11% increase from last year. That kind of sums up the good news. That things are doing good. The economy's strong. Our sales tax is up. If we look at it, but now comes the bad news. As we've talked over the past few months, expenses this year have skyrocketed. If you will go to this page right here. Actually, scale down to the next one. Right here. The total operational expenditures for the general fund, we're at about 97% of budget right now, or for the month of May. So that means there's about 2.9%. or 2.3% of our budget left to spend. If we look at this as a comparison to the same time frame as last year, we have spent about 10% more than what we spent last year. This is due primarily to the cost of the goods that we've talked about having to buy. Gasoline's gone up, chemicals have gone up, supplies have gone up. So we're spending about 10% more than what we were looking at last year. If you look at the next page, which is the total, and it would include transfers out, we are 2021, we transferred out about $25 million. And I think this is mainly just a booking issue on the accounting side of it. We typically book our transfers out toward the latter part of the year. Last year, we booked them out in May. This year, we'll be booking them out in June. So the transfers are going to kind of even out. But last year, we had transferred out or booked in a transfers out of about $25 million. So far this year, we've only booked out about 1.2. So that means with our transfers as a percent to budget, we're at 96.5% of our budgeted expenditures in May. And we're at, when we compare it to last year, we are under what we had budgeted last year at 77.3. That's a little, when you start talking about the transfers in and transferred out, it gets a little confusing for the labor, just anybody to understand. The main part I think we need to focus on here is the operational side of it. And that we are basically spending about 10% more than what we were last year, and we're right about at our 100% of our budget this year in May. Next page over is the enterprise fund revenues. And what we're seeing is that, again, good news, bad news. Enterprise fund revenues, budget year-to-date comparison to budget, we're at 109%. Year-to-date to year-to-date for 2021 and 22, we are about 1.1% less in 2021 than we were in 2022. With our transfers or non-operational revenues here, we are at 101% compared to the budget and 122% compared to the same time frame last year in 2021. So we're expending more than we had booked in 2021. And we've expended more than what our operational budgets are as a total. A lot of these are transfers in and out, profit or loss from last year, depreciation expenses, and our non-operational revenue, in our non-operational expenditures. But so we need to move on to the next page, please, Tracy. Yeah, here. As far as our non-operational interest, depreciation expense, transfers is what our O&M expense to other funds are. We see we've transferred out a lot more than what we had budgeted for, what we would have budgeted for at this time. Not over our total budget yet, just what we have budgeted for at this time. And we've transferred out more than what we did last year. Overall, again, the city's collecting more money than we did last year. We've got a strong economy, but the downside to that is we're expending a lot more money than we did last year. And that trend's expected to continue through the next 12 to 18 months. Next month, we'll have our next meeting, we'll have our year-to-date summary of 2022. And it'll be a little bit more comprehensive overview than what this one is. And I just add, any questions?
So we're spending more money, and but basically, you're expecting, we were down in May, what percent?
In May, we are in the general fund.
Sales tax revenue.
Excuse me?
Sales tax revenue.
Sales tax revenue, we are up for May by 12%.
Oh, just for the 1 month?
That's for the year. If you compare month to month,
according to this, in 21 you had 5.2 and you're down to 4.9.
yes,
Right there.
the month, if you compare from last year, we're down. But we had that anomaly of last year being, for month to month comparison, of those one-time checks coming out to citizens as stimulus monies that they were out spending.
So it's just kind of wait and see how June comes in.
I expect June to come in at about 7.3 less than what we've collected in May.
And did you,
That's historically what we've seen.
And is that how you budgeted? Is that your budget estimation for sales tax?
That's the way we would have budgeted for next year, yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Council, any questions? Michael?
Mayor, the financial reports are always difficult to understand. I think it's important, and I'll try to clarify and simplify it somewhat. We had a lot of discussions about expenses and bookings and what comes in at a certain time of the year. Last fiscal year, 21, stimulus payments did come out in May, which pushed that sales tax up. So when you look at May to this year, it is higher. But when you look at an overall year-to-year comparison, sales tax is up over last year, or 22 is up over FY 21, and that's important to note. But the other aspect of it is prices for goods and services, i.e. chemicals, gasoline, oil, things of that nature, product, whether you're buying pump motors or whatever, are exponentially higher than they were last year. We were at the wastewater treatment plant today, Mayor, with the STEM camp, and I was speaking with staff. Chemicals have tripled in price from last year. So although we're bringing in more money in revenue, we're also expending more than we expended in previous years. So we're fortunate that we've planned fairly well, and our staff does a very good job at keeping expenditures down to make sure we meet our budgetary requirements. That, in a nutshell, is where we are financially. Joe Don will bring the end-of-year comprehensive financial report to the council next month, and we'll see where we end up year to year from comparison to 21 to 22. I think we'll be okay. We are under our budget, but nonetheless, it takes a concerted effort through finance and staff to make sure that we spend appropriately and that we do not overspend our budgetary amounts. So I think they've done a very good job. Staff has.
Well, Michael, so basically it's good news then, because the bad news means that we know what the problem is, that we're going to continue to deal with that so that we do run in budget, right?
I always like to look at things positively. Yes, we've planned well. Revenue is up. Expenditures are up, but we're handling it, at least right now. Our job as staff is to ensure that council is aware if we run into any situation where that is not the case, that council is aware of that. We're not there. We're looking at, and we watch that every month. Our staff watches those expenditures and revenue come in to make sure we're doing what we said we would do budgetarily, and we have continued to do that. So, yes, it's good, but with a little downturn on the backside, which is expenditures through inflation are definitely starting to impact our operations.
Mr. Harris.
Yeah, so, Michael, so expenses are up, collections are up. Are they proportional so that we're, at the end, we're going to be, or Joe Don, this may be a question for you. At the end of the year, are we going to be about where we were when you started the budget percentage-wise, or are we going to be off a little bit as far, are we?
Well, I think we're going to be at a level that was expected when we started our budget for 2023.
But will the expenses have thrown that out of whack, though?
No, I don't. I think we've done well in keeping that
Okay.
in check and under control. And for when we begin 2023, we will be about where we expected to be.
Okay.
When we started the budget process.
And is there good news coming for 2023, we hope?
We can only hope.
Okay.
We'll be looking at that and we'll be watching that really close. We're 2 weeks into our first end of that year, and we've got some positive things that are going to happen here starting in August or so.
Everything I've read, council indicates that inflation will continue through the midpoint of 2023 at least, if not further. And July starts the beginning of the calculation period for any sort of Social Security or COLA increases. Whether you're military or Social Security, it starts in July. So July, August, and September are the 3 months they use to calculate COLA. And indications are right now that that will be somewhere in the 8.5, maybe higher range, which will be the largest increase in any sort of COLA in 40 years. So that kind of puts you in perspective where we are as what inflation is doing to the buying power of folks out there. So again, Mr. Harris, to sum up what Joe Don said, we think we're right there where we're supposed to be. And if that changes, which I don't think it will, we'll be sure to let council know, but we'll wrap up the end of year report next month. And I think you're going to see we'll be right where we said we should be with everything that's happened. I think it's a very good job, actually.
Well, I just want to make a comment on this. It's important for the citizens to understand that we do have things underhand and are actually taking a look at things to make sure that we don't run into any problems with our budget. So, and I think that's what's being said here, which helps the citizens, no doubt, to understand we got it under control, and that's good news for all of us.
I think it's also important to note that the inflation number we've even heard talked about here today is not municipal inflation. We don't buy groceries. That's groceries. 8.5% is groceries mostly. And construction and chemicals and business inflation is much higher. Any other comments on this? Let's move on to receive an update. Thank you very much, Joe Don. Receive an update on the Stormwater Master Plan.
Mayor, when you get done with the update on the Stormwater Master Plan, I have a couple other staff report items, if it please the council. They're quick, they're not very long.
Hi, Larry.
Mayor and council.
I like that pen you got on.
Thank you. This will just be a brief, high-level summary of our Stormwater Master Plan, as well as the projects that are associated with the plan, their status, and their funding needs. First, we'll take just a brief look at our Stormwater Master Plan, what it consists of, why it was created, and then look into the overall status of the construction projects that were identified with the master plan. And finally, go through the costs that are associated with those projects, including what we've spent so far and what is remaining to complete those projects. So what's the purpose of having a stormwater master plan, and what does it accomplish? First and foremost, we want to prevent loss of life and property damage from flooding events. Here in Lawton, we are susceptible to flooding and have experienced several events through history. We also want to try to reduce our disaster response costs and the risks that are associated with our first responders. A master plan also helps us proactively identify drainage problems and helps us determine the most cost-effective solution. It also prioritizes those improvements so that we can make the most of our capital improvement funds that we have available. And finally, it lets us evaluate what would be an appropriate utility fee to fund and maintain our drainage system and repair it. So back in 2003, the Stormwater Master Plan was created as part of an overall larger project with the city's consultant at that time, Carter and Burgess. It also updated our city's floodplain mapping and also created our first all-hazard mitigation plan. The Stormwater Master Plan analyzed 22 areas across the city that had significant drainage problems, such as street flooding or flooding of residential and commercial structures. And it also prioritized the conceptual solutions for those areas. You can see on the map, each one of these problem areas is delineated in red. And as you can see, they're not all concentrated in the floodplain, and they're basically from one side of the city to the other. Each one of these 22 areas were scored and prioritized based on their overall impact to the community, looking at things like arterial roadway flooding and structural flooding, or how many buildings that we could take out of the floodplain if the project were constructed. So looking at the entire list of projects that were prioritized, the entire list, they came up with about $66 million at that time for an estimate to construct those projects. $66 million, and that's in 2003 dollars. So another good news, bad news twist. The good news to date, we've accomplished about $11.5 million of those projects. And so we have reduced the flooding liability for the community with those projects that were completed. But as you can see in the table, there are several projects that are not complete or just partially complete. And so we still have much work to do. Roughly $55 million of projects remaining in 2003 dollars. But that transitions or translates into current dollars into just under 90 million, just looking at a CPI. So again, this is just a brief high-level summary of the Stormwater Master Plan in general, just to give council an idea of the scope of projects that we have, the volume of projects, and the funding that they are required. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Larry, can you go back to the very first page, or can we go back to the very first picture? That one right there. So council, mayor, if you look at the top right-hand corner there, that is a drainage system that was installed, I don't know how many years ago, but they used tin horn back then, right? Corrugated metal piping.
Correct.
Right? And it does, what happens with that piping is it will rust from the top side down, and what you'll see is what Larry shows here in this picture is the road collapsing because it rusts and then it starts to collapse. If you go to the next picture on the next page, that is a new modern box culvert, which is what Larry's team in drainage maintenance is able to install. But all that being said, Mayor, we talk about capital projects. Maintenance deferred becomes capital projects later. And as you know, the less we have in funding to deal with, the more capital projects increase in scope and size as we move forward in the future. So I think what Larry is saying is, you know, if we had all of the money back in 2003, it would have cost us, you know, what, $60 million, $65 million. But today, it costs us another $35 million to do what we could have done then. So Mayor, as we work forward in the future for capital improvement plans, we need to consider including a lot more drainage projects as we move forward.
Yeah, Mayor. Yeah, Larry, I was going to, as far as our city as a whole, what area really takes a lot of the flooding? Is there certain wards that take a lot of the flooding and that we're working on?
You know, when they put this Stormwater Master Plan together, they identified around 700 buildings that could be removed from flooding liability if all these projects were built. There's really not one area of concentration across the city that's kind of spread out. You know, one of the primary areas that we do have a frequent issue with that probably receives flooding more often is I Avenue, west of 2nd Street.
Yeah, where it goes underneath that street?
Correct.
From 10th to 2nd Street, down where Fox Radiator is?
Right, underneath I Avenue where Numu Creek was put inside of a box. Yep.
Is that like a bottleneck when water's going through that area? Because the volume can't get through that culvert, or?
You know, our current structures that we design and build today are sized for the 100-year storm event. That structure doesn't even contain the 10-year storm event, for example. So it's well undersized.
Right. after it goes through there, it goes under, I think it goes under Second, and then goes out to the creek, East Cache Creek. But there's, that just sort of free flows out there, right? There's no containment once it gets out of the city on First Street, behind the city, where the city yards are.
Yeah, there was the block structure that was constructed at Railroad, so that was part of the plan, and that project's been completed.
Okay.
But it does free flow down under I-44 after that point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for that update. Michael, you had some other staff reports.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you for indulging me. I wanted to speak about the STEM camp that's going on this week. And Mayor, you've attended, I think, maybe yesterday and today. I attended today. We were at our water treatment plant out in Medicine Park. It was very enjoyable experience. A lot of children there. Garver presented a check for that, an amount of $10,000. We want to thank them for that. And we want to also thank the, is it the Spoken Word Ministries or the Word Ministries? Spread the word. Yeah, I want to make sure I get it right. Ministries for their support of the STEM camp. I think it's very, very well received, and the children had a lot of fun and excitement with that. So thank you to the ministry, and thank you to Garver for doing that. And then again, I want to thank the City Manager's Office staff, Dwayne and Cindy from the City Attorney's Office, for making that process that Mr. Fornbaugh spoke about, a more streamlined process. We're working harder at trying to get those things out to council ahead of time so we can discuss those, so we really provide that information up front. And lastly, Mayor, we have been invited to participate. It is a cost to the city, but we've been invited to participate in a video spotlight of the Lawton Fort Sill community for the September International City Managers Association. What they've found out through our DOD contacts, they supply video for DOD to promote their projects. The contacts in the Department of Defense specifically spoke about Lawton and the FISTA project. And that got them to looking at the city. Now, when they looked at the city, they also saw that we have a very comprehensive TIF district, and we're doing a whole lot with capital improvements. So those things right there got them to call us and asked us if we wanted to participate in this video spotlight. Now, what this is a 3-video series of which 5 minutes will play in all areas where people congregate at the city manager's meeting in
Ohio.
Yes, in Ohio. I'm sorry, I'll get it out in a second. In Ohio, and it will highlight and showcase Lawton. So I believe that we should pursue that. So I'm looking for a consensus from council to pursue that. It's not a light cost, but it's not a heavy cost for the exposure we'll get. It's $23,000. I think it's more than worth the money. As they get to talk to some of our elected officials, business leaders, and community leaders, I think that that's something that we should look for. So all I'm looking for is a consensus from council. If that's something they would like for us to pursue, I'll continue to pursue that avenue. But if it's not, then we'll go another way.
Okay, so we're not going to discuss that because it's not on the agenda, but thank you for reporting that. And does that conclude your reports? Okay. All right, now item 17 in executive session has been struck by the city attorney, bringing us up to adjournment. Do we have a motion? We got a motion for adjournment, a second? And a second. Please call the roll.
Harris. Yes. Hampton. Fortenbaugh. Johnson. Hankins.
Y'all might want to venture upstairs.
Never mind.
Just saying. Might be worth your time.